Good evening, and heartfelt thanks to everybody for coming out to my Servetus rehearsal, or dress rehearsal. I'm still trying a couple of things, straightening out a couple of things, so it probably will not be glitch-free, but hopefully there's a wide division between there and unintelligible. Hopefully it'll be closer to glitch-free than to unintelligible. I'm not nervous. You'd think you'd get used to this sort of thing. The full title of this is Servetus, the Radical Reform Musical. And this is going to just be kind of an evening of very low-tech entertainment. What you might call a dramatic reading, with a dozen or so songs attached for punctuation. Then afterward, if you'd like, I'd be delighted to stick around, and if you want to do a little Q&A or discussion time to discuss the issues I raise. Because of course, drama, which I claim this is not history. Even dramatic history or historical drama is not history. There's a difference. And don't get me started on how that works. We'll be here a really long time, and you won't have heard anything. So no artificial intelligence, no computer graphics. The only fireworks are in the story. But the life and death of Michael Servetus. He was born in 1509, and he was executed, burned to death in 1553. It's really an untapped gold mine for historical drama. And of course, as far as this presentation goes, 5 centuries ago during his lifetime, or before that, sometimes people would gather on the village green or in the great hall of a palace and listen to some wandering minstrel share songs and stories and make connections with faraway places and distant times. And doing this, they'd share special connections with one another. And we can do that too, in our own way, share creative connections with one another and with our cultural and religious past. 500 years ago, Michael Servetus was a brilliant scholar in languages, letters, geography, the sciences, medicine, and in fact, until quite recently, more of his books were held by medical schools around the world than by religious schools, divinity schools. But of course, we remember him best as a religious scholar. Now, in a Unitarian Universalist audience, we're probably going to have beliefs that are all over the map. Atheists, agnostics, theists, you name it. I'm an atheist, for whatever that's worth, but this ain't about me, and it ain't about you. It's about Servetus and his times. And he was a Christian theist, and so were the people he was dealing with. So you're going to hear some God talk. Brace yourself. We're a tough bunch. We can take it. Ironically, and you can take this to the bank, Michael Servetus was not Unitarian. He believed in the Christian Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, although in an unorthodox way, and that got him in a bit of trouble. But he also believed in reason and the human capacity to learn and find our own way in religion, and that, most of all things, infuriated the church fathers. Well, that and the fact that he could just be awfully obnoxious sometimes. He was a scholar of depth and originality in an age when religion demanded obedience. The Renaissance and the Reformation were a complex time. They were, of course, a time of great achievement and innovation in science and the arts, but a time of considerable danger when it came to religion. War broke out between the different factions of Christianity as they split apart. And over about a century, from about the mid-1500s to about the mid-1600s, they managed to kill somewhere between 20 and 30 million people in Europe. And that was Christians killing other Christians for not being Christian in the right way. So, welcome to the age of belief. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the age of belief. 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 God is in his heaven and the world is right underneath the eyes of holy fathers. God is in his heaven and the world is right, except that is unless you're Martin Luther. Martin Luther sings, I took the 95 pieces and I hung them on a wall. A priest that lies and takes a bribe is surely gonna fall. Degrading old St. Peter's thrown into a toilet seat. So how you gonna save your soul? You got to. You got to save your soul. Oh, you got to save your soul. Welcome to the age of belief. 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 God is in his heaven and the world is right. And if you're good enough, you'll go there with him. God is in his heaven and the world is right. Except that is unless you're John Calvin. John Calvin sings, we got a big problem, baby, 'cause you know we're living in a cesspool of depravity and every kind of sin. We're all disgusting, rotten fruit. We don't deserve to live. So how you gonna save your soul? You got to save your soul. Oh, you got to save your soul. The problem with eternity is that it lasts forever. You got one chance to get it right, no way to do it over. But God is in his heaven and the world is right. God is in his heaven and the world is right. As long as you don't get it wrong. As long as you don't get it wrong. The world is changing, baby, no one knows a thing to do. And nothing you can do about it, it's not up to you. All facing different ways and saying this is where I stand. A dozen ways to save your soul, but just one way to save your soul. God is in his heaven and the world is right. God is in his heaven and the world is right. As long as you don't get it wrong. Good luck with that. As long as you don't get it wrong. Picture in your mind. Picture in your mind a theater stage. It's dark. The year is 1553. The setting is Geneva, Switzerland. It's before dawn, before first light. The only prop is a stake, and a man and a woman are waiting for the cart that will bring Michael Servetus to be burned at the stake. Now, picture in your mind, the man is Desiderius Erasmus. He's the foremost scholar of his generation, but he's fallen on hard times. Erasmus, he was booted out of his teaching position at the University of Basel like a pretty woman flicking off a dog tick. His crime was to call for religious tolerance. This is the Reformation. People live and die for faith, and they'll kill for faith as well. Whatever you believe, you'll be condemned by somebody, and they will come for you so fast your head will spin. And that's if they even let you keep your head. Erasmus is thinking about Michael Servetus. Poor Servetus, he says. He had to learn the hard way. Poor, brilliant fool, Michael Servetus. We can imagine Servetus singing about his take on religion. On the south end of Europe, the edge of the land of España, where the Pyrenees mountains roll down to encounter the plain, where the air is so high and so dry, the eye sees forever. That's the land I was born in, the north and east corner of Spain. 'Twas a land where a soul might see God as you wander the mountains. If you listen with awe, for God lies in the cries of the wind, in the manner of sunlight that glints on waves dancing on water. Looking out for the holy is only a habit of mind. Here's my secret of faith, the holy is already with us. God has given us reason and vision, the tools we most need. For God's face may be witnessed in love and in stars and in flowers a-bloomin'. And the fact behind all is God wishes each person Godspeed. That's the wisdom I pilfered from books in the fields, in the mountains. It was whispered to me by the wind as I wandered the land. As a boy, as a youth, as a student, life was my teacher. Oh, whatever I turn to, the holy is close to my hand. Now I'll seek for my future with God as my mother and father. Oh, my soul's become pregnant with faith, with the truth that I see. And I'm certain if I share my vision, the world will be joyous. I have only to tell all the people God wishes Godspeed. And the secret of faith is the holy is already with us. God has given us reason and vision, the tools we most need. For God's face may be witnessed in love and in stars and in all things together. And the beauty of knowing God wishes each person Godspeed. So look everywhere, look all about you, and you will find salvation. If you pay close attention, God wishes each person Godspeed. And Erasmus says to us, dream on, Servetus. Progress is a greedy master. It demands sacrifices. Servetus first wrote the book that made him famous and hated back in 1531. John Calvin. I suspect you've heard of John Calvin. He was just a beginning student back then, but both men were brilliant, and they were bound to tangle. And then the woman interrupts. Remember, there's also a woman waiting. Don't talk to me about Calvin, she says. That name makes my ears bleed. And Erasmus stares at her. She's plainly clothed, this woman, wears a scarf, an apron. She looks like she just stepped out of some scullery. And he says, well, who are you, young lady? What brings you here so early? And she says, I came to see this heretic, this Servetus. I hear he had the balls to tell Calvin he was stupid. Now that I got to see. But I ain't your young lady. You're one of them, ain't you? One of them who? Erasmus says. One of them preachers, ain't you? You know how I can tell? You preachers are all the same, that's how. Gentle talk forwards and grasping hands behind. And Erasmus says, well, that's impertinent. Besides, I'm not a preacher, as you call it. I'm a scholar. I'm a theologian. Ha! She says, a theologian. That's nothing but a preacher with a dictionary. You bring down the wrath of God and blows and stalks on simple folk like me if we step out of line by so much as a finger's width. And all the while, you're measuring to slip your hand into my purse, ain't you? Or maybe up my skirt, ain't you? Ain't you? And he asks her, what's your name? And she says, my name is Judith. They named me after a dangerous woman in the Bible. I know a ditty about preachers, she says. And she begins to sing. Preachers say, she sings, that a woman's a delicate flower, a petal to drift on the word of the church. Preachers say that a woman's a sink of iniquity, luring you down to the depths of desire. Ha! You should long for the day, but that's what preachers say. Who am I, she asks, but a pilgrim who walks in a shadow, a pathway beyond your scholarly clothes. Who am I? But a vessel no weaker than you, who has wandered a land where you'd never dare go. In your comfortable candlelit study, you never will read this book written like me. So don't stand there and stare as though I shouldn't dare. I'll walk my own way. I assure you I really don't care. What preachers say. Preachers say, she sings, that I ought to be soft and obedient, follow the rules that are written, of course, by them. Preachers say, if I fall, it's a failure in me, and whatever he does, it's still mine, weakness and sin. But I know who I am at the end of the day. Swallow this with your dram, that I don't give a good tinker's damn what preachers say. What preachers say. Erasmus says, my word. To which she replies, I'm waiting for Servetus too. People tell me that he pisses off preachers. Now I gotta see that. I gotta see him out. But wait, Erasmus says. Servetus is a preacher too. He's a theologian. Why care for him then? Well, if he told Calvin off, I'm for him. If he's a preacher, well, he's a damn odd one. And Erasmus says, oh, he's odd. That's true. He's a man with many flaws, Servetus. He's vain, pompous, prideful, disagreeable, but he was not a hypocrite. He was an innocent, in some ways, honest to the point of recklessness. And there starts the tale. So, this scholarly gentleman and this woman from the scullery come to a kind of deal. While they wait for the cart that will bring Servetus, Erasmus will tell the story how it came to this. At age 21, Servetus wrote his revolutionary treatise on the errors of the Trinity, and his comments on the Christian doctrine of the Trinity were really just technical adjustments, but he valued human connection, Servetus, and he valued reason. We all have the spark of God within us, so he wrote. We are capable of love and insight if we try, without a church to tell us what to think. Now, can you imagine, to the leading church fathers of every branch of Christianity, there could not be a fouler blasphemy than that. They fought like cats and dogs on everything else, but they all agreed when it came to Servetus. It's heresy. Some troublemaker would print such a thing. It's heresy that he would even tell the world his name. It's heresy. He ought to be dismembered limb from limb. This awful, awful, awful man. Well, what can Servetus say to a reaction like that? But I only was trying to show how the Holy is with us without doctrine or formula. Reason and love fill the need. All the answers we seek may be found in a quest, in the searching for wisdom. Then it's easy to see how God wishes each person Godspeed. It's heresy. Authority must be the basis of our faith. It's heresy. It's firmly set in our tradition's plan. It's heresy. He tries to make us look like imbeciles. This awful, awful, awful man. And Servetus pleads with them, but why do you condemn me? The formula descended through the ages of tradition, Augustine to Jerome to our own time. To question revelation using reason and research, we'll see our ancient credo undermined. How else might ancient faith be undermined? But why can't I believe what I believe? And Servetus was sincere, but it didn't matter. They banned his book and burned it and threw away the ashes. And if they could have laid their hands on Servetus, they'd have burned him as well. They did hatch a plot to lure him in with promises and honors and then arrest him. And that makes Judith laugh. Aye, she says, them fellows are preachers for sure. And Servetus, Erasmus asked, he's a fool. What did he expect? Ah, what indeed. But Servetus didn't care about wealth or honors. When flattering letters came, he knew he was in trouble. So he disappeared. And Judith laughs again. Disappeared. Yeah, men do that sometimes. So what became of him then? Servetus fled, a place where he could hide among the people with his books, a university, a place to study, argue, learn, and hide in plain sight. Paris, with the finest university in Europe, Catholics and reformers arguing, in sidewalk restaurants. He would study medicine and start over, live out his days obscure, respectable, or so he told himself. He would find love, or so he told himself. Truth to tell, Servetus did not have a head for love. He had a head for books, and only books. Can you imagine this bookworm out walking with a woman trying to be romantic? By the eastern wall of Paris, walking up the slope of Hill St. Genevieve, he sings, past these sacred halls of learning at the university. Here's a place for starting over, building up a new life out of old, he sings. Hear the choir singing at the Abbey, across the square from where the books are sold. He's singing about books. She wants to sing about love. Such a lovely time to be in Paris. Lovers stroll the winding cobbled way, she sings. Afternoons and crowds are warm, and there's a fragrance to the day. Vendors cry their products' virtues. Widows sing from window frames above. Such a lovely time to be in Paris. Such a lovely time to fall in love. Hint, hint, hint. But Servetus just doesn't get it. See the workers cutting stone to build a new church with a lovely edifice, he sings, named for Saint Etienne the martyr, who by mobs was stoned to death. 15th century's gone by now, but we still pronounce his name with grace. Oh, echoes on the hill, St. Genevieve, such a faithful, educated place. You know, I wonder how we move the hand of mystery, torn to seek a living, but with meaning in the world. Saint Etienne the martyr earned his place in history, but was that chilly comfort when those stones were being hurled? Not martyrs, Servetus, love. If you want love, you need to sing about love. Listen to what she's singing. If we stroll together to the river, wine and dainties, laughter, lively talk, she sings. View of Notre Dame Cathedral, feeding pigeons as we walk. Paris is a magic city, home of lovers, scholars, kings, she sings. Everyone's in love in my fair Paris, where life can become a million things. But Servetus's downfall was that his mind was always on a track all its own. Still I'll seek my fortune here, where heart and mind can share a fond embrace, he sings. I will lose myself in Paris. I feel summoned to this place. Paris, where the world all gathers, intellects discuss, and find romance. Oh, how joyful to be here in Paris, to be here in Paris, Paris, France. Oh, how joyful to be here in Paris, to be here in Paris, Paris, France. But while Servetus was loving Paris and struggling to be average, a very different scholar was starting out in Paris about the same time with a very different attitude toward Paris and a different attitude toward religion in general, John Calvin. Look out, Paris, Calvin's coming. Seeking fortune, nothing less. Nothing else could draw my footsteps to this sink of worldliness. Paris doesn't give me pleasure, but the future calls to me. God, you know I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be. Crooked alleys, crooked streets, smelly refuse falling down, human trash and sweat and stenches. Paris is a crooked town. Looking down upon this madness, my God is mightily displeased. He will punish with a vengeance when his anger is released. I must tolerate this city, filth and fortune testing me. God, you know I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be. Paris is a sinner's haven, with its university. God, you know I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be. God, you know I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be. Now, picture in your imagination, Calvin sees Servetus, and he also sees Erasmus at the same time. And he speaks to Erasmus first. He says to Erasmus, "You there, who's that?" And Erasmus answers, "That man, well, his name is Michael Servetus." Servetus, Calvin says, "I've heard of that rascal. I even read his book. He's wanted. I could denounce him, have him arrested." Picture Erasmus heaving a sigh. "Servetus is a brilliant man," he says. "You could talk with him, maybe even gain an insight." Calvin replies, "That's a thought." And then he smiles. A famous scholar. I could debate him, build a reputation." So Calvin says to Servetus, "You, come here, talk with me." So they meet for the first time, Calvin and Servetus. And Servetus says, "Yes, I've done religious scholarship myself," Calvin says. "Oh, I suppose that's nice." "I wrote a book myself," Calvin says. "And people bought it and read it," Servetus says, to which Calvin answers, "Well, not many, I fear, but it was a good book all the same." And Servetus says, "Book writing is a condition which I believe can be cured." "You're impertinent." "Why, thank you." And that puts Calvin's feathers up. "I put great thought into religion, same as you." And Servetus replies, "Oh, that's a pity, bad for your health, but perhaps that can be cured as well." And then Calvin says, "I challenge you." "You challenge me?" "To a debate," Calvin says. "I read your book, sir. I disagreed on many points." And Servetus is genuinely perplexed. "You mean you understood my book and you disagreed anyway? That is curious." "Listen, you, if you read my book, you'll see where I have the better of you. Issues of anthropology, ontology, soteriology, eschatology, cosmology." "Indeed so," Servetus says. You can almost hear his eyeballs rolling. "I want a debate," Calvin says. "At the university, we can both build a reputation." And Servetus says, "I already have a reputation. I don't want it. Reputations are also bad for health." And Calvin says, if we debate, I will have the better of you. Indeed, Servetus says, you'll be there? Oh, how could I miss such an opportunity? I'll make the arrangements, Calvin says. 12 midnight, when the watch is being changed, the colleges of rhetoric and religion will be there. It'll be an event. And he hurries off. And Servetus watches Calvin go. And he says, you know, to some people, God is a lovely melody. To others, God is a business. Now, this fellow strikes me as a businessman. I wonder if he expects to be paid by salary or on commission. And yet, Servetus goes on, we should not be prisoners to discord and ignorance, but to our best ideas. I keep thinking, it can't be that hard to make them understand. Keep explaining one more time and maybe people will understand. So Servetus says. Heavyweight debate is a quiet night in the center of Paris. Ain't no bear baiting, bull baiting, pillory, or steak. Well, you take what you can get for entertainment. So we'll listen to a couple artistes debate. Heavyweight debate. Gonna hear that famous troublemaker from Spain and a serious nobody named John Calvin. Hope to hear some shocking news made plain. Then the night watch come and haul him in. Because the king gets tired of religious bother, and the cardinal's out to shut him down. And the good part comes when they get discovered, and they take him to the tower and go round and round. Heavyweight debate. Now here comes Calvin, got his notes and papers, gonna make his point, gonna have his way, but the Spaniard ain't shown. Maybe come by later, maybe nabbed already. No one can say. Heavyweight debate, but I guess we wait. Calvin's getting redder in the face each minute, maybe got stood up, maybe got put down. Maybe not such holy thoughts he's thinking. Maybe, where's Servetus? Where's Servetus? Where in the realms of hell is Servetus? There's clamoring and screaming, people running, yelling, people shouting. The guards are coming. The Inquisition is arresting everyone. Students dash past. Men with guns dash past. A rush, a clatter. And finally, the square is empty. Only Calvin is left standing. And Calvin is furious. I came here, I took my chances, I showed up, I did the work. Oh, Servetus, how you fail me, project that I undertook. Maybe you just think we're joking, maybe you just think it's play. This is something I'll remember till your dying day. And Judith listens to this and says, poor Servetus, you don't ever cross Calvin, not even by a little bit. But there was a religious crackdown all across Paris. Servetus fled to southern France where no one knew him. And he became a doctor, a good one. 12 years he stayed in the city of Vienne, and he had important townsfolk as friends and patients, and he was comfortable and wealthy. And Judith says, I bet Calvin ran out of Paris too, didn't he? Showed a clean pair of heels, didn't he? And Erasmus gazes at her and says, you speak as though you know Calvin. I know more than I want to, she says. I know men in general, prickly men are, and full of trouble. Now you're a rounder sort, but Calvin, he's a sharp prick. Dear girl, Erasmus says, you have a wicked wit. Wicked, she says? Me? Not likely. I'm just compensating for my naturally tender nature. Now you're a kindly seeming fellow, so I don't mind your talking. That is the key to getting along with men, you know. You got to love their talking. So go on, tell me all about Calvin. I promise to pretend to listen. My word, Erasmus says again, but very well. Calvin fled to Basel, Switzerland, a place of scholars. I once taught there myself in better times. Yes, she says, they drove you out for being tolerant. But Calvin fit right in, I trust. He did. He's no fool, Calvin. Yes, Judith says, Calvin is a regular quick one. More's the pity. So Calvin studied and reflected. He wrote a close-packed, systematic theology, more than 1,000 pages. He called this book The Institutes of the Christian Religion. Now to Calvin, God ran the world the same way Calvin would. Stern-faced, long on discipline, short on mercy. This would be Calvin reading his religious papers. Words to describe God: unique, living, true, infinite, perfect, pure, invisible, immense, eternal, incomprehensible, almighty, most wise, most holy, most free, most absolute, most righteous, most glorious, gracious, merciful, long-suffering, and most terrible in his judgments. Words to describe human beings: fallen in original sin, seducing and seduced by Satan, sinning, sinful, dead in sin, ungodly, defiled, corrupt, most wicked, lustful, hardened against God, utterly indisposed, disabled, and made opposite to all good, and completely inclined to all evil. That's human nature. Terms of our salvation. We do not deserve salvation. God will save a few. That's more than we deserve. Elected by God means chosen and saved since before the beginning of time. The elect are saved despite their errors. The rest cannot be excused and will not be saved, howsoever hard they may pray and try to do good works. Not saved ever, damned to hell forever. Thus I proclaim my faith. And Erasmus goes on. Calvin saw himself among the elect, of course. He knew he would be saved from hellfire. The chosen were the chosen. The damned were damned. And Judith says, well, that's fine and dandy for the chosen, but them as got sent to hell 1 billion years before they were even born, that's a rough go, ain't it? Erasmus says, even so, Calvin's book sold well. Now he was famous. He had the success he dreamed of, but still he wandered, hoping to return to his native France. And one day he stopped off at the city of Geneva in the mountains just to spend the night. And when the city fathers heard he was in town, the famous author of the Institutes, they came to see him. So picture this: William Farel, leader of Geneva's Protestants, comes to Calvin, courts him like a gentleman in hot pursuit of his lady love. Farel says, as leader of our city council, Calvin, it's well known that you're a cut above, and managing our city is a job you're worthy of. We would be willing to provide you anything that you might need. And Calvin replies, gentlemen, you must be careful if you plead this way to me. I will think about your offer, but my help will not come free. Your money won't impress me. If you really want my aid, you'll pass the laws I ask for. God's the piper you must pay. And Calvin insisted that they make him virtual dictator of Geneva. To which Judith replies, didn't they even understand? They sold their freedom to that man for a mess of pottage, except they didn't even get to keep the pottage. They gave that to him as well. And Erasmus replies, well, no matter. Calvin had a fine administrative mind. He brought good order to a rowdy town. Strict he was, but he made Geneva well-behaved and quiet. No one could work harder than Calvin, to the point that his health began to fail. Lost weight, became quite ill, he did. And Farel knew they had to see to Calvin's health, so Farel proposed. Farrell told Calvin that Calvin should marry, and Calvin replied, "Nonsense. I got no time for women. They're distracting, they're infirm, they're full of sin, they cost too much. Without a fair return, I'm happy with my candle and my paper and my pen, so you can show yourself the door and do not ask again." But Farrell was persuasive. "We found a proper widow with a child in tow," he told Calvin. "Fastidious, obedient, she's really worth a throw. She'll cook and clean and sew and love you. It'll only take a vow. You will surely thank me later if you tie the knot right now." And so it was done. Idelette de Burr, the widow's name was. And can you picture the wedding? But as Erasmus speaks, he sees such a look on Judith's face. Imagine this: Judith as one of the wedding party, but years younger. Judith was that little girl. Judith was the daughter of the widow, Idelette de Burr, with flowers in her hair and flowers in her hands. And suddenly Erasmus understands, as you must understand, that Judith de Burr knows Calvin because she is Calvin's stepdaughter. At the wedding, this little girl's face is tense. She's still grieving her father's death, but no matter, Farrell goes with Calvin and Idelette de Burr and Judith before the judge. "Who now brings this woman to this marriage? Who now gives her hand unto this man?" And Farrell answers, "The woman's husband died of plague 2 years gone by," he says. "The girl is 11 years old. With the husband's expiration, mother and daughter are both wards of the state. The council and the city of Geneva have assigned this woman to be married to this man, and the girl to be a dependent of the union." "Very well," the judge says. "Sanctus, sanctus, jubilate, holy, holy, happy day. Sanctus, sanctus, jubilate, holy, holy, happy day. Idelette, do you come before me with a vow to be a wedded wife? Love, obey, and honor this your husband, constant to his comfort all your life?" And Idelette answers, "I do." "Sanctus, sanctus, jubilate, holy, holy, happy day. Sanctus, sanctus, jubilate, holy, holy, happy day. Master of our city, Master Calvin, do you take this woman as your mate? Guard her, guide her, share with her your bounty, have her, hold her unto heaven's gate." And they wait for an answer. Calvin is plainly uncomfortable with this, but he finally says, "I do. By the power vested by our council, by Almighty God who reigns above, I pronounce you well and duly married. May God bless your consummated love. Celebrate the sanctity of love. Celebrate the sanctity of love. Our God is love." And William Farrell says, "Congratulations, Calvin. We've made you a happy man. May you have a warm night of it." And everyone laughs, the whole wedding party, except for Calvin. A person with a bag over their head could have seen his discomfort. But they walk on, laughing, cheering, throwing flowers and rice, except for Calvin. And as they walk away, the girl, Judith, is left singing to herself. "How strange it's been these last 2 years since Father went away," she sings. Don't know exactly where he went, they don't exactly say. They say he's in a better place, where every heart is light. And if my father's happy, I guess that's all right. The world is full of changes, sometimes I could use a hand, she said. But no one tells me anything, they say I wouldn't understand. My mother said she wasn't sad, though sometimes she would cry. If I watched, she'd smile a smile that never reached her eyes. But now we're in this big new house, her eyes are sometimes bright. And if my mother's happy, I guess that's all right. And while Judith sings to herself, Calvin comes walking back into the room. He looks upset about something, plainly irritated about something, and he watches this girl singing to herself. The world is full of changes, sometimes all the old things fall. New cities, houses, neighbors, I just don't understand it all. And then she shrugs her shoulders and smiles a little smile to herself and sings this. Oh, my mother says I'm growing, old clothes no longer fit. And sometimes when men look at me, I'm scared a little bit. Oh, I don't know about the future, but I hope the future's bright. And if I grow up pretty, I think that's all right. Yes, I think that's all right. And suddenly Calvin shouts at her, "Shut up! Don't play in here. Go make yourself useful. Go cook something, clean something." And she says, "I wasn't doing nothing wrong." And he says, "And don't speak that way. Don't speak like some kind of peasant." And she says, "Well, don't you talk that way neither. You're not my father. You're not my father." And Calvin reaches out and catches her by the wrist and hauls her to her feet and drags her off the stage. He drags her out of the room. And there's silence. And after a time, Judith walks back onto the stage alone. She's plainly badly shaken. She's dropped her flowers. And she sings a different song. There's more kinds of mystery in this world I'll never know, she sings. Like why does the rain blow in off the sullen sea? Why is there lightning? Why do lambs die in the snow? How could you do that to me? I don't even know you. You're a stranger in my life. I never done nothing for to cause you misery. I just want to hide somewhere, maybe just curl up and die. How could you do that to me? I'll never go back, I'll never go back, or trust you again, or trust you again. And you'll never mean nothing to me. I'd rather be cold, I'd rather be cold, and sleep in the rain, and sleep in the rain. How could you do that? How could you do that? How could you do that to me? There's bigger misfortunes in this world, so I heard tell, she sings. There's war and disaster, sickness, plague, calamity. I don't know how many ways there are to live in hell. How could you do that to me? I'll never go back or trust you again. And you'll never, no never, no never mean nothing to me. I'd rather eat dirt or sleep out in the rain. How could you do that? How could you do that? How could you do that to me? The lights go down and we'll have a short intermission.